Hey there, and welcome to Dirt Rich, seasonal conversations about food and farming. I'm Jared Lumen, the Soil Health Lead for the Sustainable Farming Association, and I'm really excited for today's conversation as it's very timely with fall and the holiday season. We're going to be discussing pastured turkey farming with pasture-based farmer Kathy Zeman. We'll also discuss the other pasture-based meat products that she raises on her farm. It's sure to be fun and make you hungry for Thanksgiving dinner. So with that, we'll move right into our conversation. Thanks so much, Kathy, for joining me today.
Oh, Jared, thank you for asking me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Why don't you just start with an introduction of yourself and a little bit of an introduction to your farm?
Okay. Well, my brother Dominic and I farm this farm. We call it Simple Harvest Farm Organics. Our motto is, if it ain't simple, we can't do it. So that's why we like this farm.
I like that too.
Yeah. We bought it back in 2006. And, I'd grown up farming, registered Holsteins, showed cows all over, judge cows all over. So, rich in that environment, but flatland farmers. So I'm not sure flatland farmers should be allowed to buy really hilly land because it takes a different brain set to do this. So, but in the end, I think this kind of slopey farm will survive climate change much better than the flatland farms that I was used to. So, because you can capture water right on the high side, the whole thing about swales and berms kind of work. So
interesting.
Because this farm is all highly erodible, that's that technical term that the soil people use.
Sure.
I immediately put it all in grass, grass and pasture. And so if you got, that much. We've only got 20 acres, but that's 20 acres of grass. So we graze, we fenced it all in. My nephew Jordan came up and helped put all the fence in, and we graze everything here. So we graze goats and sheep and pigs and ducks and geese and turkeys and broilers and hens and meat rabbit.
Wow.
We have grass. Part of that's also my risk management, right?
Sure.
If the African swine fever, knock on wood, ever shows up, it won't take all, may take some pigs out, but it won't, take down my whole farming operation. When the bird flu went through in 15, again, I could protect myself from, we didn't break. And as far as I know, there just weren't that many pastured operations that broke. I didn't know any. Most of those
I'm not sure I'd ever heard of any either. So.
Right. It was just the CAFOs really that broke. So anyway, it's part of my risk management to have a very diverse, operation. And I'm organic. So again, even though I could have 1 million animals here, because I have different species, that I never build up that many diseases, per species. So we rotate a lot because there's not that many diseases that cross over between species. So again, that's part of my risk management, and it's part of creating a healthy environment for everything. It's how I protect my soil, my water, my air.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. That's awesome. What were all the animals you said? You had quite a list, a mouthful of animals there that you're raising.
So we do goats and sheep, and we've run cattle before. Like I literally would milk our own Jersey cows.
Sure.
But that one is a little bit harder for me to rotate there. They don't really fit my operation. So on the ruminant side, it really is sheep and goats. Okay. And then we do pigs. We do pastured pigs.
Okay.
We bring in, to date, we have brought in feeder pigs, but I'm pretty sure we're going to start farrowing. It's hard for me to find high quality pastured organic feeder pigs that fit into a pastured system, right?
I've heard that. Yeah, I've heard that can be difficult. Yeah.
Because you need systems to match up. So if you pull out, they just have to match up, and so they don't. So anyway, and then we do meat rabbit. And then that's all pastured. And then on the poultry side, we do duck, goose, turkey, chicken. We do broilers and hens.
Wow. Yeah, that is quite the list. And how did it, when you started your farm? Well, first of all, I'm curious, like that choice to put it all in grass, the recognition that the slopes were dangerous and that grass would solve that. Where did that recognition come from? Especially coming from flatland farming where there's very little pasture and grass. Was there a conference, a speaker, an individual? Like, how did you first come to that realization?
I'm old, and therefore I'm old. And therefore, the way that we farmed, I think I was born in the golden age of agriculture. So I was born in 1958. So the way that I come from a family of 12 kids. So dad, right, had a diversified small farm that his children were his unfair advantage. We were brilliant hard workers, haha. Most of us were brilliant and hardworking. And so he took advantage of that, and a lot of us ended up farming. So you can tell he did something right, because we love that kind of hard work, whatever. That all works for us.
That's interesting, because I know a lot of people don't want to, they grew up that way, and they go the opposite direction. So that's interesting too.
We kind of love it. But awesome. Because of that, the way our farm was, it was a little bit hilly, but not really. There was just that one big slope. But we grew up with a lot of, dad had outdoor pig production. We had cattle on pasture. I mean, as a kid, like, 5th, 6th, 7th grade, going out to get the cows early in the morning to bring them into milk, we were always barefoot, and I would literally try to find the cow pies. When cows get up, they poop. That poop is warm, and if you are out there at 4 a.m. and your feet are freezing, you would literally go walk in that warm poop to warm your feet up. So that is how we grew up. I think in that golden age of agriculture, it was not yet corporate as much. There weren't a lot of drugs and chemicals involved yet. I mean, it was still before things kind of boomed, and that's how we grew up. So that's, I just knew all of that from growing up. And then of course I had to work to get my 20% down. So I always knew I was going to farm.
Sure.
But at some point you got to get 20% down to buy your farm. So then, I went and worked professionally to come up with that cash. And then I finally bought my first farm back in 98 or something.
And is that the farm you're on today?
Nope. This is my third farm.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Sure.
That's my third farm.
So that's interesting that was something that you've always known. When you started farming and pasture-raised farming, you had all this grass, you had all this land. What made you, how did you get started with the livestock, and what did that look like? Was it one species at a time, or did you recognize the importance right off the bat of that diversity that it offered you, both financially and risk, disease risk? I mean, how did that progression look?
It started with mixed eggs. So the chickens started with the laying hens. They were like a 4-H project from my brother Nick, literally. And like all 4-H projects, they get out of hand quickly, right? They just doesn't ever work.
Sure.
And they became a business, and we still call them Nick's eggs. We sell them at Just Food Co-op and restaurants.
Sure.
And Nick's eggs. And then it was goats. I knew, it was like the poor woman's cow, the goats, right? So I had goats.
Okay.
So at one point, literally, we had 40 goats at the Steele County Fair, so my nephews and nieces could show them. That was not wise, of course, but we still did it because it was fun. So we had a lot of goats, yeah. Okay. And then we finally got that to so that was kind of a project, but maybe not all that profitable at that time, right? Because we did dairy goods. But I even exported registered son and goats to Mexico. I mean, there was a time there that I know. Right?
Wow. Yeah. That's awesome.
Right. So anyway, so then there are goats. So we really went from the chickens to the goats. And then we always have had, a handful of, and we do honeybees too. So, we have to pollinate. So we do honeybees.
Sure. Why not, right? One more thing won't hurt. Yeah.
How we're doing it, you might as well just go in all in.
Yeah.
And we always did pigs, because we always bought feeder pigs for my dad.
Okay.
And then I started out with Icelandic sheep. I love Icelandic sheep. But I also as it kept going, we had a harder time finding shearers, and I don't want to shear. Now we have Katahdins. We have hair sheep, because they're super worm resistant. Mm-hmm. They're super unpatched. They get fat looking at grass. So I really like our Katahdins. And then I think and then the rest of the poultry just kind of evolved. I mean, once you do chickens, you might as well do duck and goose and turkey. So
Sure. Interesting. Yeah. So it kind of started with those eggs off the bat, but then you moved more before going more into the birds, you kind of started off with more of the ruminants and the larger livestock. And I suppose they can cover more land quicker too, as opposed to the chickens would have taken a lot more marketing maybe to build up to justify enough birds to cover that land base.
Right. Because at some point, and I learned early on to get to scale, to get to bulk, right? Mm-hmm. So I learned early on that, bagged feed costs you 33% more. So you have to get to enough numbers to get to bulk as fast as if you're going to be, unless you're a hobby. But if you're a business, you got to get there fast, right?
Sure. Yep.
The other thing that worried me, I struggled with, even under a certified organic operation, I didn't always like my fertilizer choices. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to be able to raise enough of my own manure, right? So that I could pretty much fire my fertilizer man, right? So, So that's what we have now. We create enough manure. So we do a fairly decent job at that. Again, it's back to that. It's back to my risk management, and it's back to being kind of resilient and self-sustaining. Does that
Sure.
make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's awesome. And I've always thought the Sustainable Farming Association, sustainable is more. It's three kind of things the way I see it anyway. It's financial sustainability and the ability to make a living off of something into perpetuity. It's the
Right.
ability to build your soil and for your soil to last in perpetuity, and it's also having a decent lifestyle. And so with all those animals and all that livestock, how is your lifestyle kind of, you enjoy what you do, but is it overwhelming at times? How does that all work?
I love livestock, right?
Sure.
I work professionally. So I'm working for other people, correct?
Sure. Yep.
But as a farmer, I work for myself.
Yes.
And so my work now aligns perfectly with my values and my principles, right? And so
Yes.
again, the downside of that is if I screw up, it's me. Nobody, right? There's nobody else to really really yell or blame. So and I get to learn, I get to do everything. So I like that part, right? Sure. I like having to learn all of these skills that I might not have. Anyway, but I grew up with livestock. So I grew up milking cows. So I know that, when we were growing up, if there was a wedding, somebody had to milk. If there was a funeral, somebody had to milk. Yeah. So, that part was normal.
Sure.
We're only on this planet for, 100 years, and you might only have a 60, 70, 80 good thinking functional years. And I'm going to enjoy what I do, every year if I can. And so I like my livestock. And I use it as an excuse to get out of things I don't want to do. So
hey, that is a perk. I've never looked at it that way. Wow. That's insightful. That's awesome.
It's a standing joke in our family. Whenever Dad didn't want to do anything, he would say, I got to grind feed.
That's funny. That's funny. Now I can't use that because anybody who hears you say that now will know it's an excuse.
I know, right?
Podcast. You're busted.
I just tell people I got to go grind feed. We don't have a grinder. We don't have a grinder, but
yeah, that's awesome. That is awesome. I love it. Well, I can totally appreciate loving what you do. And, the old cliche is if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. But after working my day job, sometimes it's refreshing and rejuvenating to get outside and work with the livestock and on the land. So it's cool to hear you talk about that.
Like the one thing that I wouldn't do, like people say, oh, we need a weekend off. We're going to go camping. No, I will go glamping, but I will not go camping because I work in that all the time.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to do is go someplace that's got bugs and it's hot and you're sweating. No, not doing that.
Sure. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Well, moving on a little bit to more kind of narrowing in on the turkeys, kind of our animal of the hour, our highlighted animal of the hour here. What does that specifically look like? That is something that I have no experience with, is seeing pastured turkeys. What is the process, the day-to-day chores, and how does that look?
So early on, we free ranged both our broilers and turkeys, and that worked okay. The one thing that so I grew up with registered Holsteins and a lot of production awards, but we were married to the feed cart. So if you have to be at the feed cart 12 times a day, that's take some commitment. And with pastured poultry, if you're going to free range them, poultry, remember, get taken out at night by wild kitty cats, wild raccoons, owls, you name it, there's predators. So then you got to time it. You got to be home at dusk, 15 minutes before dusk, to push them in, to keep them safe. Well, then all of a sudden I'm like, I don't want to be married to that hoop, so I don't want to do that. So we do cattle panel hoops. They're 8 by 12, and we move them every day. So they are on fresh grass every day. Okay. And that is all of our poultry. So it's the best of everything. I protect them from predators. We have not lost anything to a predator.
Wow.
Since we've been into the hoops. We have no coccidiosis because you're always moving to fresh grass once or twice a day. We do not crowd them in there. We hang the feed and the grit, so that helps hold it down in case of wind, the water. And we don't pull them, we push them, because I have a skid loader and she does a lot of work for me. The skid loader bucket touches the front and I push it. So we never have to worry about running over any of the birds because they're afraid of that loud skid loader. They're running away from you, right? So we push with the skid loader. So the skid loader always works on my farm because she does a lot of work. So that is the one piece of machinery that my neighbor, my good one, is in charge of making sure that the skid loader works because I'm not a mechanic. Oh my goodness, not at all. No.
Okay. Well, you had a little experience with free ranging, and so I'm going to ask you this question, and maybe you've heard it, but it's something I've always heard for years, and I don't know if it's true. Is it true that in a rainstorm, a turkey can drown if it looks up and it swallows rain and it drowns? I've heard that said, and I've always wondered if it's true.
I have never lost a turkey. I have lost broilers.
Okay, interesting.
The Cornish, right? Yeah. So it kind of depends on where they're located, and you'll see this you'll hear it and see it from other pastured people. I just saw another on Facebook because, of course, if it's not on Facebook, it didn't happen. You can get if you have flash flooding or any kind of thing like that, even in hoops, they will. I've lost some in that case, but I've never lost a turkey. We've had turkeys when I let them free range. The heritage birds fly up into your trees. And they have been blown out, and one of them impaled themselves on another tree. So they're there, right?
Yeah.
So that can happen.
Okay.
So again, if you think that through, the turkeys at dusk like to perch in your trees. So when you have to go catch them in order to bring them to the Denison meat locker to get butchered, you got to get them before they're 30 feet up in the air. Okay. Yeah. And you can imagine that doesn't always go smoothly.
Sure.
So you have to maintain a sense of humor when you're doing those things.
And that, I guess, another advantage of your hoop style because they can't fly into trees. So that makes a lot of sense. Okay. The land that and it sounds like you're managing all your poultry, so this may kind of apply to all of them, but if there's anything unique to turkeys, I'd be interested to hear that too. But the land that they've been raised on, what benefits or changes have you seen on the actual landscape and in the soils and in the plant growth that you've run these, I don't know if you call them turkey tractors or chicken tractors, that you've run those over?
So it doesn't matter whether it's the chickens, the ducks, the geese, the turkeys. Although the geese we did kind of let free range because they are kind of predator. They are predator control. They're mean. They pick on all my nieces. They're mean.
Sure.
But anyway, my nieces used to like me up until the geese took them on. But I digress. So what I have found out as we and in a season we probably only repeat a track. They're tracks. You loop. They go down and they come back. Mm-hmm. You move them 12 feet, every day or 24 feet every day, depending on what the weather gives you.
Sure.
The grass grows back thicker.
Okay.
Is that amazing? So if you think about it, if you don't move them fast enough, then because they're pooping, right? So they're adding manure to the soil. Yeah. So if you let them sit too long, like if you don't move them, then that over fertilizes that. But our land, where we've had the tracks, we have much healthier grass.
Okay.
So it comes back thicker, and we get rid of the weeds faster. Have I seen that like one particular grass or legume comes back more? No, not necessarily. I would tell you we have more grass, but that makes sense, right? Anytime that if you do not really manage your pastures super well, grass will outcompete your legumes. So that's probably true. But in my case, I don't care over there on that side.
Okay. And are you rotating where is impacted by birds and then where is impacted by your ruminants and where is impacted by your monogastrics, your pigs, every year or throughout the season? Or is it the kind of same year or year after year?
It's more, well, the goats are separate because in order for me to contain our goats, it's cattle panels because goats are goats.
I've always heard, cattle are pretty easy. You can keep them in with a wire. Sheep will find a way out if it's there, but goats seek. They live to find a way out. So that makes sense.
Good luck on the goats, yeah. So the goats we rotate goats between 3 pastures and they're all cattle panel. We could run hot wire, but we have too many children around or, with school tours. And so they're always not smart enough not to touch that wire, right? And or someone dares them to touch the wire or, whatever. So that doesn't work. So that's cattle panels, goats. But the sheep, we do let the sheep, the farm is fenced in, so I can put a cattle panel over the driveway, and then I literally let the sheep run all over the farm at least 3 or 4 times during the season. That helps. And then the poultry, they go through 2 different sections, and then one section is usually they don't get on at all one year.
Okay.
So we rotate year on and year off.
Sure.
Pigs are in their own pasture. We don't let the pigs up where they are, but the sheep and the poultry they do a pretty good job of intermixing.
Yeah. And that's a nice thing about your cattle panel hoop structure is that's movable and portable, and that you can get to where you need that animal impact. So that's awesome.
And then our rabbits, we don't like to mow lawn because that's a waste of my time. So our rabbits are more or less wherever there's grass or lawn, and they will look a lot more like the flat tractors. We move those. Those are 4 foot by 4 foot slatted. They're 4 foot by 4 foot, 2 foot high, and then the bottom is slatted, and we literally pull those ahead every single day too, twice a day.
Okay. Huh. Well, that's fascinating because that is something that I have never seen is pastured rabbits. So that's awesome.
We tried free ranging them, but they've got a great way of, making those, what do they call them? Tunnels, not tunnels.
Oh,
burrows.
Sure.
Watership Down, that book comes to mind. Anyway, they got out. They would have, oh my goodness, they're 40 feet out of the fence. We've got rabbits coming out of the ground. We're like, okay, that didn't work well. So yeah. So we put them in the slatted
Sure. So you direct market all of this, am I right? Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
What have you heard or yourself or heard from your customers anything about the pastured turkey that they are just, they compare it to the store-bought stuff or something, and there's any difference, or what have you heard from them?
Our customer, so we do 2 different birds, right? We do the broad-breasted whites, and so that you can bring them in late July, and then because they grow fast. And then we bring in heritage ones. We bring in Bourbon reds in last part of April. The heritage breeds need at least 26 weeks in order for them to get mature enough to lay in that last layer of fat.
Wow.
So, but they're spendy. Those are spendy birds.
Sure.
So it's my balance in the world. We bring in the broad-breasted whites. We price them a little bit higher than we should because it helps offset the price of our heritage. And we try to keep that down so that more people can afford them. Because it's like the niche of the niche, right? These are certified organic, pastured, heritage. Whoa.
Wow.
But if we don't keep that breed going, right, then we're all back down to just a handful of genetics, and that is a bad idea. So we're our customers are willing to invest in heritage birds. I call it an investment because they're more spendy than anything else that we raise.
Sure.
But I would tell you that the heritage birds have I just call it a more turkey taste.
Okay.
Right, they just have more turkey, so not gamey, but they've got a more intense turkey flavor, and the fact that they're fresh. So there is a difference between fresh and then thawed, which I didn't believe either until we try it. I'm like, oh, there really is. And then our broad-breasted whites do not, and I don't know if it's because they're pastured and organic, or they're because they've never been frozen. But again, our customers say they just have a fresher taste. And I don't know what that means, a more moist taste. A lot of our customers don't brine them. They don't have to. So I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah, well, I have never had a heritage bird, and so I may have to try that sometime. It sounds interesting. I would love to. But overall, it sounds like customers are very happy with it. And that fresh, never frozen, I suppose that would make a difference. Not something I've considered.
You would imagine, that chemically, scientifically, you'd say, oh yeah, on the chemical side, if you've frozen that protein, right? And then you thought that should have something different, both texture and taste, than just 100% fresh. So
sure.
Yeah. And then again, and it's so much fun too. People come, a couple of days before Thanksgiving. People have driven 2 hours in a blizzard to pick up their turkey, and I thought they were crazy, and they thought they were crazy. But because in November, usually Minnesota is beautiful already, right? And so if you're going to come to grandma's house to pick up your turkey to go cook it for everybody, it's kind of fun that those 2 or 3 days of having 50, 60 some people here to pick up turkeys is. And again, I try to keep my numbers manageable, right? Because I could have millions of turkeys, but then that would not do well on this land, right? Because I want to have appropriate numbers for the scale for the land that I've got.
That makes sense. Absolutely. Okay. Anything on the turkeys that I've missed? Something that's unique to how you raise your pastured turkeys, how they taste, anything that I've missed on them?
Turkeys will eat their weight in grit.
Really?
Oh my gosh,
And grit
turkeys. Yeah.
grit for any listener, that's literally just like rock, right? Or granite or
Yeah,
something, and
that's
it
rock.
helps them digest feed.
Right. To be more efficient. And turkeys, if you want to have fun with turkeys, you can finish them off on wheat alone.
Really?
So turkeys do really well with wheat, which again, think of that. Think how we do want more diversity on our soil and on our land. And so if
Hmm.
we can work wheat into our rations, then we encourage more farmers to grow more wheat that puts more diversity on our soil, blah, 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 right? So
No, I'm
another
all with
reason,
you.
turkeys.
Yeah.
Another reason we should do turkeys.
Yeah, that's awesome. And changing gears a little bit out of the turkey realm, you talked a little bit about how you have an off-farm job. I Tell me about that.
Well, it's actually an on-farm job. So I'm the executive director for the Minnesota Farmers Market Association, and I work out of my farm office. And
Okay.
this started back in 2012. I was selling, direct marketing and selling at farmers markets and I, some to the grocery stores. But I kept running into, like, it appeared to be rules and regulations that were being interpreted differently between who said it or where you sold. And that kind of was, to me, it should have been consistent. And so at the same time, Minnesota Farmers Market Association put an ad out that said, "Hey, we want somebody to kind of manage our association." And I said, "Well, pick me, but only if you're okay if we also do some public policy. Otherwise, in 6 months, you'll fire me and I'll fire you, and that won't be any fun. We'll just have wasted 6 months." So that the board at that time said, "Yeah, we should do this." And so it's been a wonderful 8 years. It is,
Sure.
I've worked with the boards that, you have different people come on and go off. And the farmers market world is a wonderful, loving, supportive, right, boots on the ground, resilient. It's where community eats and meets, right? And so we've done good work, and we have managed to do a lot of public policy. We managed to get some laws passed that make it easier and faster and better for local farmers to sell direct. So I think that works, and we have a lot of work ahead of us. If COVID-19 did nothing else, it should have slapped us all on the head, right, to let us know how fragile that corporate world is on the food side, because the people that were doing pretty well, the people that were on we do the direct marketing and the local food, that held really well. There's most CSAs are sold out. Farmers market vendors are doing really well. Customer counts are down, but that's because we told customers, don't all come, send one person. We don't need 100 people there, because that's not going to work well for
Sure.
COVID-19. Meat producers, egg producers, everybody is pretty much at capacity selling out. I mean, we need more meat processing plants, obviously, but we
Yes.
needed them before COVID-19, and we certainly shone a light on that with COVID-19. So
Yeah. Yeah, well, I know it has been, there's been a lot of challenges with it, but my wife and I, we direct market meat as well in the Twin Cities. And if one silver lining or blessing has come out of it is demand to local food. So I'm really excited I'm hoping that this really makes a change, and that people really start to consider local, and then it becomes a bigger piece of the industry. But what,
Well, I think
go
they
ahead.
will. I think they will, Jared, because even like the Minnesota, MDA's Commissioner of Agriculture, Tom Peterson, and
Mhm.
MDA has done a good job of really looking at local food and putting out his, they've got some flexibility and some grants. And so they've got grants to enough, as much as they possibly could. So I do believe this will hold, right?
Good. Yeah. What is the importance of a farmer's market? Why is it so valuable for consumers and for farmers?
Well, you got your shortest mileage, right? Your food miles are tiny. Most of us, like I'm 7 minutes away, right? So that's where our food will come from, to a farmer's market. So you've got very short transportation, and you're buying from your neighbors to your neighbors. So you've got those dollars going around, right? Because
Circulating in the community. Sure.
right? Yep,
Yeah.
that's all stays local there. From a vendor side, it's a really good incubator, a business incubator, right? So before you'd have to, put in a lot of numbers, whatever it is, you could try out something at a farmer's market, see what sells, what doesn't sell, what our customers taste, whatever. And it just gives you so much flexibility. Now, having said that, because, I'm a good friend of Ryan Pesh with the University of Minnesota Extension, Ryan's mantra is you need more than one sales channel. So I would, even though farmers markets are wonderful, they're your storefront. That's where you see people, you build your customer base. You should probably also have a couple of wholesale. You should do some direct, right? So you never have all of your eggs, in one basket.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And that's interesting because that's another perspective that I've always liked about direct market farming, whether that's through a farmer's market or direct off the farm, is that you do have kind of naturally built in several different outlets,
right,
as opposed to one wholesale or one, selling everything to the local elevator. Every customer, you lose 10% of your customers, you still have a lot. If you lose one of your only outlet, you're in a lot of trouble. And so that's fascinating point.
Well, think of the farmers that sold 90% to restaurants this year, right? So again, that lesson about having a varied sales channel. And that's the difference between direct marketing and commodity farmers. If you sell soybean, it's a widget, right? You're going to sell you're going to sell like everybody else, but a direct farmer has that ability. She can, she builds in normal risk management by having that varied sales channel.
Sure. Well, if you had one farmer, we'll just say 25-year-old Jason or Jessica walks up to you and says, I want to get into farming. I love what you're doing. What would be your words of wisdom? You've been doing this for a while. You built an incredible farm system that's diverse. How would you instruct them, or what would you encourage them to do to get started?
I give this lecture all the time. Even if I'm not asked, asking. So awesome. When everybody falls in love with the romantic part of farming, right? We all, we never think about the blizzards, the frozen waters, the droughts, the floods. We think about, oh, look how pretty those turkeys look in the trees. Okay, yeah. So I always recommend to farmers that, have they done their market analysis? Is there room in the market for what they want to do? So if we already have 500 CSAs in this 100, mile square, do we need another produce CSA? Maybe they want to do an herb one or a flower one or a meat one. Right? So you really have to do the very first thing. And I know that sounds weird, but remember, I got a business background, but you need to do a market analysis, because otherwise all you're choosing to do is put other farmers out of business. And to me, that is not what we do in farmers market world. We build community, right? We build resilient community. So do your market analysis, and then you got to do what you love, right? So if you don't like gardening, if you hate weeding, probably you're not going to garden. You're going to do something. I hate weeding. We put hay down everywhere. We mulch. Because if I weed more than twice a year, so I don't want to do that. So we don't. We actually buy our vegetable CSA from our neighbor, Sogan Valley. So we do some perennials, but we're not going to do that weeding. Yeah. So that's what I tell them. You got to start, and then the harder one, I would recommend that they build their business plan on their values. So I think,
tell me.
Yeah, so I think too many times people say, this is how I'm going to make money. This is how I can make money. So this is my value set. So what I did at some point, I kept doing more research, because I didn't start, there was no certified organic feed around. We started, there was no certified organic farmers I was the first one in, right? So, and then I helped do paperwork to get other people in, because it's pretty lonely otherwise if you're the only one doing it. And so like right now we've got 10 of us, I think now that together place feed orders, because our certified organic grain comes from Wisconsin. So if we all share in that transportation cost, like we group our orders, so the truck comes across with a couple of it. So that way we share that transportation. So, but I early on, I knew that I wanted to be organic. I did not want to use chemicals on our soil. We grew up that way. Dad never used chemicals on our soil. Well, of course, now he had 12 kids that could go out there and pull weeds. Okay, I get that. We were the last dairy farm to put in a step saver. Dad didn't even put a pipeline in, because we did surge buckets, right? Because we had a workforce to do that. So I kind of get that part of it. But early on, we grew up without all of that stuff. So I didn't want to have a lot of chemicals on my land, because I saw how that was like, soil's like on meth, it's on crack.
Hmm.
And growing up, we did not need a lot of drugs to raise our livestock because we did it right even back then. I mean, I remember treating scours with egg, sugar, right? The old electrolyte, right? It was just this crazy thing that grandma probably came up with. So, and it worked, right? Because we never had a million calves. We had the appropriate number of calves and we
Sure.
clean anyway. So I knew that. So I said, okay, this is the value set and I will make my business work. So I said, we are going to be 100% organic. I'm not blinking. Okay, you bring in 100% organic inputs. Your price point is going to be higher than not. And then I build my business plan from that. So I never made an excuse. And I never said, well, I didn't want to compromise on my values. So I didn't.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's easy, but I like it. I like it.
And I imagine your customers will learn to love and respect that too, and that you are sticking to your values. And they know when they're coming to you, they're going to get a certain consistent product because that's just what you do.
And the downside, Jared, is that my price point is not cheapest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, where does that put people that don't have a lot of money to spend on food? So on the backside, we donate. We find ways to donate food to people. A little bit tricky on my meat side because again, I use a custom exempt plant. So donate or sell, but if it's private, I can do. So that's how we make the world work because otherwise we're out of balance, right? Otherwise, the only people that get my good food are people with a lot of money. Ooh, that hurts, right? So.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting too, because it does cost more, but it's kind of interesting when you put it in comparison. I've always thought that when you look at it in comparison to what a lot of folks will spend on a lot of stuff, that it's really not that high. It's all values. And when we direct market, a lot of our customers, they're not necessarily that we have some high earning customers, sure, and that's great. But we also have a lot of not high earning customers, and they just value the quality of their food. And that's maybe a perspective that it would be awesome if we could shift a perspective over a nation of, valuing where their food comes from.
Right.
But I also love.
When I tell people when they buy from us, they're really protecting these 20 acres, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is this little 20 acres on this planet are going to be no soil erosion, no water pollution. We're not building antibiotic resistant bacteria. That's what they're supporting when they buy from Simple Harvest.
Sure. And I also love that importance and that focus on just giving back, recognizing what you've been given and being willing to contribute back. I think that's really important. So thank you for that. Is there anything else that I haven't covered, that I haven't shared, or that you're working on that you'd like to take this opportunity to share?
Well, you just segued into it. So, I love the land that I get to take care of, right? But I also know that this land was stolen from our Native Americans. Mm-hmm. So part of my plan when this farm will, I'm hoping to make sure, and I've got my little sister Kateri, she's going to take care of it, and in my will, I want to make sure this farm goes back to a Native American female farmer, the people that we stole this land from, right? The election of 2016, George Floyd's murder, and then COVID-19. And I began, once you see it, you can't unsee it. But I serve on a lot of state committees, for local food. And everybody on there are white people. We do have a fair amount of women, but not a lot of BIPOC farmers at all, or BIPOC food makers. And that bothers me a lot. Like in the US, white males have all the privilege, white females are next, then men of color, and then women of color at the bottom. And so I sit in that second seat of privilege, and I'm willing, to invest some of my privilege to make sure that we get BIPOC food farmers and food makers at the committees where law is set and policy is set. So there is a whole bunch of us now looking at this in Minnesota and Wisconsin, that we're going to identify the committees that we have no other voices on, that it's only white people. So we're going to say, okay, here are those committees that we need to get BIPOC people on. Where are our BIPOC people? And then let's find them and help identify them, and have them come and, work on these leadership committees. And then we're going to come up with this chunk of money, because just think of it, Jared, one time that really made an impression on me, when I read about the one family that was going to cost them $1,000 to attend the Moses Organic Farming Conference, because the registration, and then their daycare for their kids. If we do not provide daycare for our young farmers, how do they get to these things? Are we really just only setting policy and having conferences for old white people? Okay, look around. That's what you see a lot of times. And that's not good for agriculture. It's not good for how we're creating food in this planet. So we're also going to come up with money so that we can get these BIPOC people to help us, but we'll pay them just, to sit at these committees. Because some of these committee meetings can be long and boring, at least sometimes, not all of them. But if it's a 4-hour meeting, then we can pay them, we'll pay them mileage. And so we're trying to identify where we need them, and then we identify who they are, and then if we've got money to help them do it. So like, for instance, the legislature told the MDA they have to have the Emerging Farmers Task Force or Emerging Farmers Working Group. No money came with that. So do we really expect all of our emerging farmers to volunteer? They're trying to run farms. They're beginning farmers. As a beginning farmer, do you have 20 hours, every month to volunteer to sit at committees? No, you're trying to make your farm work. So we're going to try to come up with money that every place that we need to see more of our emerging farmers, our BIPOC farmers are. Oh yeah, the USDA calls us socially disadvantaged farmers. There's all these lovely terms for everybody, that's not that traditional white male. We're going to try to identify where the gaps are, who they are, and then help get some money to make sure they can serve. And then we have all the voices at the table. They will have all the people at the table. And then we can make equitable and just decisions for everyone and not just some of us.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for that work and all of the stuff you're doing. You really have a full plate, it sounds like, to keep you really busy between that goal as well as your job and what you're doing for farmers in the Minnesota Farmers Market Association, as well as what you're doing on your farm. Thank you. That's awesome. And that's really incredible. If there was somebody out there who wanted to reach out to you specifically or learn more about what you're doing, or maybe, purchase some meat from you, how would you like them to reach out to you, or where should they go to find information?
I used to tell people to email me, but now I've got 3,000 unanswered emails, so that's not working that great right now.
Sure,
they can call, they can email. I've got a website, right? So it doesn't really matter. So Simple Harvest Farm Organics is a website, Minnesota Farmers Market. It'll all come to me. So they email, phone.
Yes, awesome. Well, thanks so much, Kathy. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate your time, and I love what you're doing.
Jared, thank you. I'm glad to do this podcast, and thanks. It was fun talking.
Dirt Rich is produced by the Sustainable Farming Association. We believe that agriculture, done well, heals. For more resources or to tap into the Farmer to Farmer Network, visit us at sfa-mn.org.